She needs you more than I do. Sophie Rinaldi said it so gently that Gabriel almost believed her. He stood beside the dining table with one arm already inside his black overcoat, his phone glowing in his other hand. 6 armed men were waiting downstairs. Somewhere across Manhattan, someone had broken into Mara Vescari's house and left a photograph of her dead husband on her 8-year-old daughter's pillow. Gabriel had already made the decision. That was the problem. Lock down the block, he told his security chief. Nobody enters or leaves until I get there. He ended the call. Sophie watched him from across the candlelit table. You have people for this. I have people to secure the house. Then let them. His dark eyes settled on her. Most men in New York learned quickly that Gabriel Rinaldi's silence meant a decision was finished. Sophie had never been most men. Mara called me, he said. And that means you personally have to go? I promised Julian. There it was. Sophie lowered her gaze to the dinner between them. Gabriel had cooked tonight. Badly. The steak was overdone. The potatoes had too much salt. One candle leaned crookedly because he had shoved it into the holder with the same concentration he used when negotiating territory. 20 minutes earlier. Sophie had laughed when he swore at the stove. 10 minutes earlier. Their son had kicked beneath Gabriel's palm. Gabriel Rinaldi, whose name could empty a room, had dropped to one knee beside his pregnant wife and stared at her stomach like he had just witnessed a miracle. Again, he had whispered. Sophie had smiled and moved his hand. Slightly. Their baby kicked again. For one perfect moment, Gabriel had looked young. Then the phone rang. Now Sophie reached beside her plate and picked up a white envelope. Gabriel noticed it. What's that? She crossed the room and placed it in his hand. He opened it. The ultrasound photograph stopped him colder than any threat could. A tiny profile. A curved spine. One small hand near the face. Today? He asked. Sophie nodded. Gabriel's jaw tightened. The appointment. You had a meeting. I should have been there. Yes. No accusation. Somehow that hurt more. Gabriel looked at the photograph again. His thumb moved carefully along its edge. I'll come home as soon as Mara and her daughter are secure. Sophie studied the man she loved, the tailored coat, the gun concealed beneath it, the face that made enemies reconsider entire wars. That he could control streets, money, men, but he could not seem to recognize when his own marriage was asking him to stay. She needs you more than I do, Sophie said. Gabriel stepped closer. His hand settled against her cheek, warm and familiar. Attraction still moved between them effortlessly, but tonight tenderness hurt more than distance. You always understand, he murmured. Sophie closed her eyes when he kissed her forehead. That was the cruelest part. He truly believed it was a compliment. I'll be here before you wake up. She opened her eyes. Be careful, Gabriel. He left. The front door closed. Engines started beyond the windows, then faded into the Manhattan night. Sophie stood alone beneath the chandelier, one hand resting over their son. On the desk behind her sat a folder Gabriel had never opened. Dates, contracts, threatening messages, and a pattern connecting Mara's emergencies to one man inside his organization. She had planned to show him tonight. Instead, Sophie picked up her phone. Her former law partner answered on the third ring. Sophie? She looked toward the door Gabriel had just walked through. Prepare the papers, she said at a pause. Are you sure? Sophie touched her wedding ring. No. Her voice trembled once, then steadied. But prepare them anyway. At 5:17 the next morning, Gabriel walked into his bedroom and knew something was wrong before he turned on the light. Sophie's slippers were gone, not kicked beneath the chair, not beside the bed where pregnancy had made bending down uncomfortable. He crossed the room and opened her closet. Half empty. Gabriel went still. Men had tried to kill him without producing that kind of silence. Sophie? Nothing. He checked the bathroom, then the nursery. The crib he had spent 3 nights assembling stood beneath the window, unfinished mobile still inside its box. His phone was already in his hand. Where is my wife? His security chief hesitated. Boss, answer. She left at 2:08. Mrs. Rinaldi instructed the night detail not to follow. And they listened. You personally authorized her to dismiss household security. Gabriel remembered signing that order after Sophie told him she refused to live like a prisoner simply because she had married him to at the time. He had admired her for demanding it. Now his own signature stood between him and finding her. He opened the nursery closet. Her overnight bag was missing. So were the prenatal vitamins she kept on the shelf. Not panic, then planning. His gaze fell on the changing table. A folded page rested beneath the ultrasound photograph she had given him hours earlier. Gabriel picked it up. You cannot keep promising everyone a future by being absent from hours. He read it twice, then a third time. His phone rang. Mara. Gabriel stared at the name before answering. Are you safe? Yes. Your men found no one inside. Stay with the detail. Gabriel, I'll call later. He hung up. For once, Mara's crisis would wait. Gabriel walked downstairs with the photograph in his hand. Find Sophie. He ordered. 3 men moved immediately. Then he stopped them. He remembered Sophie at 6 months pregnant, standing in this same foyer while he tried to double her security after a threat against his organization. If I say no, she'd asked, does that word still mean something after marrying you? Gabriel had looked at her for a long moment, then removed the extra guards. Now he could activate cameras, toll records, private investigators, police contacts. By breakfast, he could know which door she was behind. He could also prove that every promise about her freedom had only applied while her choices pleased him. Wait. His men stopped. Gabriel's jaw flexed. Confirm she's safe. Nothing beyond that. Boss, if there's a threat, then you tell me. You do not bring her back. The words cost him more than the order revealed. Upstairs, the bed still carried Sophie's scent, lavender shampoo. The faint citrus lotion she rubbed over her stomach every night. Gabriel remembered one of those nights 2 months earlier. He had come home after midnight and found her asleep with a book across her chest. He had removed it, pulled the blanket over her, then crouched beside the bed. When the baby moved, Sophie had opened one eye. You know he can't hear your scary voice yet. He can hear. Then say something useful. Gabriel had leaned toward her stomach. Your mother is impossible. Sophie had laughed, caught his tie, and pulled him down for a kiss. He had believed moments like that meant everything between them was fine. His phone vibrated. A message from security. Mrs. Rinaldi is safe. She arranged transportation through her former law firm. Destination shielded by attorney-client confidentiality. No immediate threat detected. Gabriel exhaled. Then another message arrived. This one from Sophie. We're safe. Please don't look for us. Gabriel's eyes dropped to the ultrasound photograph. His wife had not left recklessly. She had taken their son, her medical records, her medication, and enough knowledge of Gabriel's world to disappear without becoming vulnerable. He could find almost anyone in New York, but finding Sophie now would require violating the very boundary she had trusted him to honor. Behind him, a quiet voice said, She left because of me, didn't she? Gabriel turned. Mara stood in the foyer, and for the first time, Gabriel did not know which woman he was supposed to protect. Mara did not wait for Gabriel to answer. She did. It wasn't a question. Gabriel stood beneath the foyer chandelier with Sophie's ultrasound photograph still in his hand. Why are you here? Because your men moved my daughter to a safe apartment, and I wanted to know why you weren't there giving orders yourself. I gave orders from here. Mara's expression tightened. Finally, Gabriel's eyes hardened. Men had apologized for less. Mara didn't. For 3 years, she said. Every time something frightened me, you arrived before I could decide whether I needed you. Someone entered your home last night. I know. They left Julian's photograph on your daughter's pillow. I know what they did, Gabriel. Then don't tell me I overreacted. Mara stepped closer. I'm telling you Sophie has been paying for your promise to my husband. That landed differently. Gabriel looked away first. His phone vibrated. Security. He answered immediately. Tell me. We confirmed Mrs. Rinaldi. Reached a property in the Hudson Valley. It's held through her former firm's client trust. We don't have the address. Don't obtain it. A pause. Understood. Gabriel ended the call. Mara studied him. You could find her. Yes. But you won't. She asked me not to. For the first time that morning, Mara's anger softened. Gabriel typed a message. Tell Sophie I need nothing from her. I only need confirmation that she and the baby have medical care and security. He stared at it, then deleted the last word. Need. That was exactly the language he had misunderstood. He wrote instead, please tell me you're safe. Nothing else. I won't come unless you ask. He sent it. Minutes passed. Then the reply appeared. We are. 2 words. Gabriel sat down on the bottom stair. Mara had seen him negotiate with men who wanted him dead without blinking. She had never seen him look frightened by a text message. She still wears the ring, Mara said quietly. His gaze snapped up. How would you know? Sophie came to see me yesterday. Gabriel rose. What? Before the appointment. Mara reached into her purse and removed a photocopied sheet covered in dates. She asked about every threat I've received since January. Cars following me. Anonymous calls. My daughter's school alarm. The broken window. Gabriel took it. Beside each incident, Sophie had written another event. January 14th. Gabriel rejects Sloan redevelopment proposal. February 9th. Caleb loses 2 voting proxies. March 22nd. Audit ordered on Sloan-controlled companies. Last night's break-in followed another scheduled restructuring vote. Gabriel's face changed. Not rage. Calculation. Sophie saw this. She saw the pattern before either of us. Why didn't you tell me? Mara's laugh held no humor. She wanted to tell her husband herself. Gabriel looked toward the dining room. The unopened folder. The dinner. The ultrasound. She had been waiting to protect him while he was preparing to leave her again. Mara lowered her voice. There's something else. She removed an old brass key from her purse. Julian gave me this 3 days before he died. He told me that if anyone ever started frightening me in patterns, not randomly, I was supposed to give it to you. Gabriel stared at the key. You've had this for 3 years? I thought he was being paranoid. Until Sophie put the dates together. Gabriel closed his fist around it. Did Julian tell you what it opens? No, but he said one thing. Gabriel waited. Mara's eyes held his. He said if the threats ever started, then the man who killed him had never really been after him. Gabriel's phone vibrated again. Sophie. For one irrational second, hope moved through him. Then he read her message. My attorney will contact you today about temporary separation terms. Please respect them. Gabriel looked from his wife's words to Julian's key. In one morning, the 2 promises he had built his life around had changed meaning. And for the first time, Gabriel wondered if losing Sophie and losing Julian had begun with the same mistake. Trusting the wrong man. Gabriel found the folder Sophie had meant to show him exactly where she'd left it, beneath his untouched dinner plate. He opened it standing up. By the 3rd page, he was calling Caleb Sloan. Conference room. 30 minutes. Caleb arrived in 20. Gabriel's senior captain entered Rinaldi headquarters wearing an expensive gray suit and the relaxed expression of a man who had survived too many dangerous rooms to fear another. You wanted me? Gabriel slid a redevelopment contract across the table. Explain Clause 17. Caleb glanced down. Standard indemnification. No. Explain why the same language appears in an anonymous threat sent to Mara Vescari. Caleb's eyes lifted. Only for a fraction of a second. Enough. Gabriel leaned back. Around them, 6 captains remained silent. I've frozen your access to 3 construction accounts, Gabriel said. Until I understand why my wife found connections my own people missed. Caleb's expression sharpened. You're freezing my businesses because your pregnant wife played detective? Gabriel's voice became quiet. Say that about her again. The room changed. Caleb understood. He smiled thinly. You're making a dangerous accusation. No, I'm changing who gets access while I decide whether to make one. Gabriel stood and left before anger could become strategy's enemy. 2 hours later, he walked into a quiet restaurant north of the city. Sophie was already there. Neutral ground. Public. Her attorney sat 3 tables away. Gabriel noticed that first. Then everything else. The exhaustion beneath Sophie's eyes. Her loose blue sweater. The wedding ring still on her hand. He wanted to touch her. He didn't. You respected the terms, she said. You asked me to. That hasn't always stopped you from deciding you know what's best. Gabriel accepted the hit. I confronted Caleb. Sophie's face changed. Already. I restricted his accounts. Gabriel, I gave you a pattern, not proof. I know. Then don't frighten him into destroying evidence. That stopped him. Sophie opened her bag and removed copies of the documents. Every incident involving Mara happened within 48 hours of a decision that weakened Caleb's position. But there's something worse. She placed 4 photographs of threatening letters beside one another. Look at what happens when Mara gets scared. Gabriel studied them. You go personally, Sophie said. Your security shifts with you. Meetings move. Routes change. Caleb learns which captains you trust enough to leave behind. Gabriel's eyes lifted slowly. He's not just distracting me. He's training you. Silence stretched between them. Gabriel had spent his life studying enemies. His wife had studied him, and she'd seen the trap first. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Sophie's mouth tightened. I tried. The answer landed cleanly. No anger could defend him from it. Gabriel reached across the table, then stopped before touching her hand. Sophie noticed. After a moment, she turned her palm upward. Permission. His fingers closed around hers. Warm. Familiar. Devastating. I was wrong, he said. Sophie's thumb moved once against his knuckle before she withdrew. Being right doesn't make me ready to come home. I didn't ask you to. Something vulnerable crossed her face. Gabriel continued. But Caleb knows you were looking. I assumed he might. That makes you a risk to him. And your solution is guards? My solution is asking what you'll accept. Sophie studied him. 2 people. Chosen by me. They don't report my movements unless there's an immediate threat. Done. And you don't come to the house without permission. His jaw tightened. Done. Sophie's phone buzzed. She glanced down. Her expression changed. A news alert filled the screen. Federal authorities review Rinaldi construction contracts after anonymous financial disclosure. Gabriel's phone began ringing almost immediately. Then another. Then another. Caleb had moved faster than either of them expected. Sophie looked across the table. If you go after him now, he'll say you're silencing a whistleblower. Gabriel silenced his phone. For once, he didn't stand up and leave her. He stayed seated. Then, he said, looking at his wife, we find a way to beat him that doesn't cost me you twice. By noon, 3 Rinaldi accounts were frozen, 2 city contracts were suspended, and Gabriel's allies had begun calling with the careful voices men used when deciding whether a powerful man was still powerful. Gabriel ignored every request to blame Julian Vescari. The offer came formally at 1. 5 senior captains gathered in the private room above Rinaldi headquarters. Caleb's chair remained empty. If Julian ran the accounts without authorization, one captain said, the government gets a dead man. We keep the companies. Gabriel stood at the window. And Mara? Protected. Her daughter? Untouched. And Julian's name? Nobody answered. Gabriel turned. No. One word ended the discussion. Gabriel. Another captain warned. We're talking about hundreds of millions. You're talking about putting my crimes on a man who died saving my life. We're talking about survival. So am I. He dismissed them. An hour later, Gabriel drove to Mara's secured apartment with only 1 guard. Sophie had sent him a message that morning. Don't destroy anything Caleb might need badly enough to expose himself for. Gabriel had followed her advice. That frightened him more than he cared to admit. Mara was waiting with the brass key. It opens a private box, she said. Julian kept it through a trust under our daughter's name. The box was stored in an old private records facility in Midtown, untouched. For 3 years. Inside were ledgers, account numbers, copies of construction agreements, and a small encrypted recorder. Gabriel recognized it immediately. Julian used to carry it during sensitive meetings. Mara pressed play. Static. Then Julian's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, something went wrong. Gabriel stopped breathing. Mara turned away. The recording documented Caleb's unauthorized financial network in fragments. Dates, shell companies, coded payments. Enough to confirm Sophie's pattern. Then Julian's voice changed. Gabe, if I don't make it. Mara and Lily. Gabriel's hand tightened around the table. Make sure they're safe. Promise me. Another voice answered. Gabriel's own. I promise. The recording skipped. Then cut to encryption. There was more, Mara whispered. Gabriel stared at the device. He had built 3 years of his life around half a dying man's sentence. His phone rang. Sophie. He answered instantly. Are you all right? A pause. Yes. Only then did his shoulders loosen. I found Julian's records. And you were right about Caleb. Sophie went quiet. Gabriel heard traffic behind her. Where are you? At my attorney's office. You have the 2 guards? Yes, Gabriel. He closed his eyes briefly. Good. She heard something in his voice. What happened? Gabriel looked at the recorder. They want me to blame Julian. Sophie understood immediately. And if you don't, I could lose the construction companies, properties, political protection, maybe more. Gabriel. I said no. Silence. Not admiration. Not forgiveness. Something quieter. You didn't have to do that for me, she said. I didn't. His gaze moved to Mara. I did it because a dead man shouldn't have to carry the sins of living ones. Sophie's breath softened through the phone. For a moment neither spoke. Then Gabriel said, I wish I'd understood that sooner. He wasn't talking only about Julian. Sophie knew it. Before she could answer, Mara's phone lit up with an alert. Then Gabriel's. A financial news bulletin. Rinaldi Holdings credit lines suspended amid federal review. A second message followed from one of Gabriel's captains. Alliance vote tonight. Sloan wants you removed unless you accept the Julian story. Gabriel read it once, then deleted it. Sophie heard the silence. What did Caleb do? He finally named his price. Gabriel picked up Julian's recorder. His empire could survive if he sacrificed the reputation of the man whose death had haunted him for 3 years. If he refused, he might lose everything he had built. Across the line, Sophie said quietly, Don't decide from guilt again. Gabriel looked at the encrypted final section of Julian's message. For once, his wife's voice, not a dead man's promise, was the one he chose to listen to. At 8 that night, Gabriel walked into the Alliance meeting and surrendered nothing. By 9, he had lost 2 captains, access to 4 companies, and nearly half the votes that had kept Caleb Sloan beneath him. Gabriel left without changing his answer. Julian would not be blamed. Outside, cameras crowded the sidewalk. Gabriel's security team opened a path toward his car while reporters shouted questions about federal investigations and collapsing credit lines. His phone rang. Mara. Gabriel stopped beside the armored sedan. Old instinct told him to answer and move. Instead, he looked at his security chief. Mara and Lily? Already transferred. 6-person detail. New location. Clean route. Any confirmed threat? No, Gabriel declined the call. Handle it. His chief blinked once, then nodded. Gabriel got into the car. Hudson Valley. 2 hours later, rain streaked across the windshield as the sedan stopped outside a private gate. Gabriel didn't tell his men to open it. He stepped out alone and called Sophie. I'm outside. Silence. You said you wouldn't come without permission. I won't. Gabriel looked toward the distant house beyond the trees. I'll stand here for 5 minutes. If you don't want to see me, I'll leave. The line went dead. For minutes later, the gate opened. Sophie appeared beneath an umbrella. Gabriel stayed where he was. She approached slowly, one hand supporting the curve of her stomach. You look terrible, she said. I've had worse reviews. Almost a smile touched her mouth. Almost. Gabriel removed a slim folder from inside his coat. What is that? Control of the trust for you and our son. Everything in it is separated from Rinaldi businesses. Your attorney verified it this afternoon. Sophie didn't take it. Why? Because if I lose everything, you won't. Her eyes narrowed. And if I don't come back? The trust is still yours. Rain tapped softly against her umbrella. Gabriel had bought houses with signatures. Ended partnerships with signatures. This one was different. It removed his ability to use protection as a reason to remain necessary. Sophie finally accepted the folder. You always think 3 moves ahead. Not with you. No, she said. With me? You assumed I'd still be there when you finished making those moves. Gabriel looked at her. I was afraid. Sophie went still. He had said those words to almost no one. After Julian died, every time someone needed me, I thought leaving meant failing them again. So I kept going. And kept leaving me. Yes. No defense. No excuse. Just the word. Sophie looked away. Gabriel's phone began vibrating. Mara again. His eyes dropped to the screen. Sophie noticed. Answer it. No, she may need you. My people are with her. That never stopped you before. Gabriel silenced the phone. I'm trying to understand why it should have. Something shifted in Sophie's face. Then she inhaled sharply. Gabriel moved instantly. What? Nothing. He kicked. His gaze fell to her stomach. Sophie hesitated, then took his hand. She placed it against the side of her belly. Their son moved beneath his palm. Gabriel's face changed. For several seconds, the rain, the empire, Caleb, everything disappeared. His thumb brushed the fabric over the movement. Sophie looked at him, close enough now to remember exactly how his mouth felt against hers. Neither moved closer. That restraint became its own intimacy. Then Sophie frowned. The trust. What about it? She opened the folder beneath the umbrella and pointed to the beneficiary verification page. A date. Lily Vescary's birthday. Sophie's eye sharpened. Gabriel, Julian's recorder was held through Lily's trust. Yes. And the encrypted section needs a key. Gabriel understood before she finished. 40 minutes later, inside Sophie's attorney's secure office, they entered the date. The recorder unlocked. Julian's voice returned through the speaker. Gabe, if I don't make it, keep them safe. Gabriel closed his eyes. Then came the words he had never heard. But don't become me. Don't make Mara live with a dead husband forever. Gabriel opened his eyes. Julian continued. Make sure they get to have a life after me. A breath crackled through the old recording. And Gabriel's hand found Sophie's. Have one yourself. Julian's final words left the room silent. Gabriel stood beside Sophie with his hand still around hers. For 3 years, he had treated guilt like loyalty. He had answered every call, anticipated every fear, built protection around Mara and Lily so tightly that he had never noticed he was asking everyone to remain inside the moment Julian died. Mara arrived 40 minutes later. Gabriel played the recording once. She didn't cry until Julian said, "Have one yourself." Then she covered her mouth and turned toward the window. I tried to tell you, she whispered. Gabriel said nothing. You know what the worst part was? Mara faced him. Every time I tried to handle something myself, you arrived. Every frightened phone call became proof that I couldn't live without Julian because you wouldn't let me learn how. Gabriel absorbed the accusation without retreating behind authority. I thought I was keeping my promise. You were keeping yourself guilty. His eyes moved to Sophie. That truth belonged to more than one relationship. Gabriel approached Mara and placed the brass key in her palm. No more. Mara looked down at it. I'll provide security while Caleb remains a threat. Professionals. At your direction. After that, you decide what your life looks like. You're letting me go? No, Gabriel's voice softened. I'm stopping myself from pretending you belong to my responsibility. Mara closed her fingers around the key. For the first time in 3 years, she smiled at him without grief between them. Then Sophie's phone rang. Her attorney. She listened for less than a minute before putting it on speaker. Caleb filed an emergency petition with the Alliance, the attorney said. He's calling Gabriel financially compromised and demanding tomorrow's restructuring vote be moved to tonight. Gabriel's expression sharpened. He thinks I'm cornered. Sophie looked at the documents spread across the desk. No. He thinks you'll react. Gabriel glanced at her. She pulled Caleb's threat timeline closer. That's how he's controlled this from the beginning. He creates pressure. You move exactly where he expects. So I don't move. Not yet. Sophie circled 3 names among the captains who had withdrawn support. Caleb only wins if these men vote with him. Make him believe you're transferring the disputed companies tonight. Gabriel understood. He'll bring everyone loyal to him into one room and expose the structure we've been trying to prove. Gabriel's security chief shifted near the door. Mrs. Rinaldi should be moved before we do anything. Sophie looked at him. No, Gabriel's jaw tightened. Sophie. She met his eyes. Here was the old crossroads. Command her. Move her. Call it protection. Instead, Gabriel asked, what will you accept? Her expression changed. The 2 guards we agreed on. My attorney stays with me. I remain here. Gabriel wanted 6 men, armored transportation, 3 safe houses. He gave her what she asked for. Done. Sophie gathered the financial evidence. And I control the release package. If Caleb tries to bury the records, I send everything to outside counsel. You'll become part of this publicly. I already am. Gabriel stepped closer. You don't owe me that. This isn't about owing you. She placed the evidence inside a sealed folder. It's about deciding what kind of family our son is born into. For a second, Gabriel looked at her stomach, then at her face. He touched her cheek. This time Sophie leaned into his palm. Barely. Enough. I don't know if I can fix us, he said. Then don't try tonight. Her hand closed around his wrist. Just don't become the man Caleb expects. Gabriel lowered his forehead to hers. No kiss. Something harder to earn than one. Trust. His phone rang. The alliance was assembling. Gabriel straightened. Sophie handed him the folder. Ready? He looked. At his wife. The woman he had once left because he thought someone else needed him more. Then at the evidence that could cost him his empire. Yes. Gabriel walked toward the door. This time, Sophie wasn't the person he was leaving behind. She was the reason he knew exactly where he was going. Caleb Sloan was sitting in Gabriel's chair when Gabriel entered the alliance chamber. 12 captains surrounded the long table. Lawyers waited along the wall. Phones lay face down beside untouched glasses. Caleb smiled. You're late. Gabriel removed his coat. No, I wanted everyone here. That erased the smile. Caleb pushed a document across the table. Sign over the disputed companies. Accept that Julian Vescari acted without authorization. Federal exposure stays contained. Your remaining businesses survive, and this organization keeps its alliances. Gabriel looked at the paper. Hundreds of millions in assets. Years of influence. A way out. All it required was sacrificing a dead man's name. No, Caleb leaned back. Then you're finished. Possibly. Gabriel placed Sophie's sealed folder on the table. But not alone. Across town, Sophie sat beside her attorney with her laptop open and 2 guards outside the door. On screen were 3 prepared transmissions, federal counsel, independent auditors, and attorneys representing the families Caleb had cheated. Her finger rested beside send. Back in Manhattan, Gabriel opened the folder. Caleb's face changed when he saw Julian's ledgers. You have no idea what releasing those does to you. I know exactly what it does. Your credit is gone. Your political protection disappears. Half these men walk. Gabriel looked around the table. Then walk. Nobody moved. Caleb's voice hardened. You built an empire. I built something that became useful to you because I was too afraid to lose it. Gabriel took out his phone and called Sophie. She answered immediately. I'm here. 2 words. Enough. Gabriel looked directly at Caleb. Release it. Sophie pressed send. The files left her screen. Caleb surged to his feet. Stop her. Several men moved instinctively. Gabriel's guards did too. Stay where you are, Gabriel ordered. He didn't. Need a gun. The room obeyed. Those records don't just expose me, Caleb said. They expose you. Yes. You'll lose territory. Yes. Companies. Yes. Maybe your freedom. Gabriel's expression never changed. You made one mistake, Caleb. You thought I would sacrifice anyone except myself. Phones began vibrating around the table. One captain checked his screen. Then another. Caleb's network was no longer theoretical. The ledgers showed he had skimmed from allies while using Rinaldi companies to conceal it. The men who had been ready to remove Gabriel turned toward Caleb instead. Gabriel didn't smile. He had won nothing cheaply. His phone rang again. His security chief. Boss, possible surveillance vehicle near Mara's new residence. Every old instinct came alive. Go. Take control. Be necessary. Then another call flashed across his screen. Sophie. Gabriel answered. Her breathing was wrong. Sophie, I think something's happening. His blood went cold. What? My water broke. For 1 second, the alliance chamber disappeared. 7 months. Too early. Gabriel turned to his security chief. Mara. Protected. Team has the vehicle contained. No confirmed breach. Gabriel looked once at Caleb. Months ago, he would have stayed until every enemy was personally dealt with. Tonight he handed command to his chief. Finish this legally. No retaliation. No civilians touched. Then he walked out. He reached Sophie's building in 17 minutes. She was already being taken toward an ambulance, pale but furious at anyone trying to help too much. Gabriel stopped beside her. Fear stripped every title from him. I'm here. Sophie looked at him. What about Mara? Protected. Caleb. Finished enough. Her eyes searched his face. And you left? Gabriel took her hand. This time I knew where I belonged. Hours later, beneath hospital lights, their son arrived small, furious, and breathing. Gabriel stood beside Sophie as the medical team carried the baby toward neonatal care. His empire was breaking apart outside those walls. He didn't reach for his phone. Sophie tightened her fingers around his. Gabriel looked down. She was still wearing her wedding ring. But neither of them pretended that meant he had earned his marriage back. 6 weeks after their son was born, Gabriel Rinaldi owned less than half the empire he'd had the night Sophie left him. 3 construction companies were being dissolved. 2 properties had been surrendered to creditors. Former allies no longer returned his calls. Caleb Sloan was facing the consequences of the records Sophie released, but Gabriel's name remained inside those records too. His attorneys warned him that investigations could last months. Gabriel stopped asking when they would end. At 3 in the morning, his biggest problem was usually a bottle warmer. Their son, Noah, had finally come home after weeks in neonatal care, but Sophie had not returned to the townhouse. Gabriel didn't ask her to. He came when invited. He changed diapers badly, learned which crime meant hunger, and discovered that a 7-pound boy could make a feared man stand perfectly still for 40 minutes because moving might wake him. One Tuesday morning, Gabriel's phone vibrated while Noah slept against his chest. Mara. He looked at the screen. Months earlier, he would have answered before the second ring. Instead, he checked the message. Lily's school needs a new emergency contact. Can your office send the security information later? No rush. Gabriel typed. I'll have them contact you this afternoon. You choose who goes on the form. Then he put the phone face down. Sophie had watched the entire exchange from the kitchen. You didn't call her. She didn't need me to. Something almost playful entered Sophie's eyes. Careful. You're becoming teachable. Gabriel looked down at Noah. Don't tell anyone. She laughed. The sound still did something dangerous to him. But Gabriel had learned not to mistake warmth for permission. So when Sophie asked him 2 months later to meet her at the Manhattan townhouse, he arrived without assumptions. The dining room looked almost exactly as it had that night. Same table. Same chandelier. No candles. On the table lay the ultrasound photograph. Gabriel stopped. I found it in your coat, Sophie said. Its edges were worn now. He had carried it through the Alliance collapse, the hospital, meetings with attorneys. Gabriel picked it up carefully. The night you gave me this, you said she needed me more than you did. Sophie held his gaze. I remember. I thought you were giving me permission to leave. I was telling you I'd stop believing asking you to stay would matter. The words still hurt. They should. Gabriel nodded. I understood too late. Sophie looked toward the living room, where Noah slept in his carrier. Too late for the marriage we had. Gabriel's fingers tightened around the photograph. Then Sophie stepped closer. Not necessarily for the one we could build. He looked at her. No victory crossed his face. No relief that assumed the rest. What do you want? It was such a simple question. Once, Gabriel had believed love meant knowing the answer before anyone else could speak. Sophie reached for his hand. I want you to come home. His thumb moved over her wedding ring. Because no one needs me? No, she smiled faintly. Because I do. This time, Gabriel heard what the words actually meant. He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. And if Mara calls, we check whether she's actually in danger. And if the organization calls, we decide whether it can wait. And if you need me? Sophie moved closer until her forehead rested against his. I tell you. Gabriel's hand settled carefully at her waist. And I stay. She kissed him then. Not like a woman rewarding a man for changing. Like a wife choosing the man who had kept changing even when he wasn't promised forgiveness. A small cry came from the living room. Gabriel instinctively turned. His phone began ringing at the same moment. He looked at the screen, then at Sophie. Then he silenced it. Together, they walked toward their son. Months earlier, Gabriel had left the woman he loved because he believed someone else needed him more. Now he finally understood. Love wasn't proving he could save everyone. Sometimes, it was knowing who needed him to stay.